Hey, welcome everyone. Welcome back to our weekly party time with Atmananda, Krishna Menon. And surprise, surprise, we have Jenny Beal back again. Thank you, Jenny, and for being a gracious substitute host, super willing to support this experience for all of us. We all appreciate you. Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's lovely to be here, Bill.
So we have a couple of open spots in the rotation. I'm not sure that Verena is still in the group, but Verena, if you're watching this later, you missed, we didn't communicate prior to this book study, and I have substituted you because of that. And thank you for volunteering for the rotation, but we're going to need to replace you. And also I have one more open spot. If you're not in the rotation and you are interested in a co-host spot, we still have, 30 weeks of book studies left. I have 2 open spots. So if that's of interest to you, please email me at billfreeonline@gmail.com and we can fit you into, it would probably be 3 spots between now and November when we'll finish. And I'm really enjoying this. I heard, I don't know if any of you watched the podcast. Oh, Catherine, mute your mic, please. There you go. Rupert and Don Hoffman and Simon from the UK did a podcast that was published last week. If you haven't watched it, it's free on YouTube. Be sure and watch it. It's 2 hours and 18 minutes. It is excellent. It is so excellent because Rupert is asking Don some scientific questions. Don is asking Rupert some more spiritual questions, and they're asking each other how they get to verify that that consciousness is fundamental to reality. And their answers are amazing. And then Donald, of course, he takes you way out into the Star Trek zone with his positing his theories of what would science do with the understanding that consciousness is fundamental to reality. Well, it would change everything. And so it's really fascinating to listen to and watch that interview if you have a chance to watch it. And also, we have a new trailer for Awakening Mind Films that's coming out this week. We're just waiting for the credits to be added to it. And we're about 97% ready for the film. I think the film will be published around the 1st of May. We're sending it to all of the cast to give their feedback before we publish it to the public. But that the edit is about 97%. It's awesome. And thank you, anyone that's here that has been part of the support of that, financial support that helped us to be able to go to these different places and have the interviews. And we couldn't have done it without your help. So thank you. And we'll go ahead and get started on the book study. Jenny, thank you for your last minute co-hosting. I appreciate it very much. All of us do.
Right. So, well, let's start with 61. What happens to objects when known? And I think we need to think of knowing in the way he's using it here as more like being aware of, rather than knowing facts about an object or knowing the name of an object or anything like that. So he starts by saying that in order to perceive anything, we must use one of the five senses, and each sense comes back and tells you what the object is. It tells you it's seen it, and then he says consciousness faces the object and knows it. And I think what he means here is consciousness faces the object and is aware of it. It doesn't know it as an object, it's aware of it. And at the end of every function, so that's the sense function, knowledge dawns, so awareness dawns. And he goes on, just as each sense organ is capable of sensing only its particular object, so hearing will sense sound, and seeing will sense physical objects. So each organ has its own specific range of things that it can sense. Consciousness can only know consciousness. So knowing the object from consciousness point of view, knowing the object means that the object is transformed into knowledge, in other words, into awareness. The object's no longer the object as it is as before. So it's quite a complicated argument. And then a bit later on, he has these little equations. I know it equals I know myself equals I know truth equals I am truth, because once you get to the point of consciousness only knowing consciousness, there is only one. There's not a one who knows and a thing that is known. There's a collapse of that duality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is so good, because it does it breaks down how it all works and the different ideas that are offered, so that you can discern and see the subtle differences or the subtle nuances of moving from the mind that labels to the presence, to the essential nature, which is unchanging.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then maybe you take out the labeling function and there's just pure seeing. And then that pure seeing, you can feel much more easily the connection between awareness and pure seeing, and feel that the two are one.
So when you say that, it's a visceral.
Yes,
it's even deeper than a
exactly.
visceral. Would you say?
Yes, it's there is no separation, and you sense that any kind of separation is just a conceptualization of mind. In other words, the witness and the thing witnessed. So the seer and the thing seen. But if you just go to that raw seeing, and it's so close to pure awareness that you don't feel any distinction between me seeing and that being seen. There's no me and it.
Yes, you collapse duality completely.
Yes.
Yeah. This is so important. These little details of his explanation of the subtle workings of consciousness is amazing.
Yes, yes. And then at the end, he says, even the statement, I know, is wrong because I and knowledge and knowing, or I and awareness are one.
Yeah. Both subject and object merge.
Yes.
It's the intersection of being. That's what I'm going to put that thing on it. The intersection of we're having a conference. If you're not registered for the conference, please know that the conferences are April 21st to the 23rd, and they're live. They're free live, and you can purchase replays, or you can join the community now and get them the whole library of all the conferences. But it's I love I love to look at all these different ways of the teaching and see how the teaching, even Atmananda Krishna Menon, has influenced some of our teachers that will be in this conference.
Yes.
Yeah. So is looking at 62, the question is, or the title is, Progress on the Path of Devotion to a Personal God.
Yes, this is interesting because Atmananda was taught the path of devotion by his guru, just for completeness, but his real path was the path of jnana. And I think one of the reasons it was important that he learnt the path of devotion was to recognize that path of devotion to a personal God is a dualistic path. So, it's it can be worship of the guru, or it can be worship of a statue. Well, devotion to all sorts of things, and ultimately, the path of devotion should lead to devotion to truth itself. That you love only truth itself. You don't love a teaching. You don't love a teacher. You don't love an object of any kind. All you love is the truth. So he says, when your earnestness is deep enough, you get a real teacher, and you're gradually taken right to the absolute, and that's what your real teacher will show you. Will tell you not to be devoted to him or her.
Yeah, yeah, and it shows, and this is where I feel this is where the authentic, or the authentic kind of a guru or teacher steps aside, doesn't bring attention to itself.
Yes.
And some of them you'll hear them point to the Sadguru, but they stay as the guru. They stay as the image of or the symbol of. And you'll hear many of the teachers, well-known teachers, that will give gratitude, or give some kind of reference to their teacher as being, you'll see, a lot of teachers you'll see would have Ramana's image behind them on a it's not really making them, I guess it is making them special, but it's really referring to them in honor or in respect.
I think the respect comes not from the person of that teacher, but from what was imparted, and what was imparted comes ultimately from the universe.
Yeah.
And it was just imparted through that particular body mind, but it doesn't mean that that particular body mind is in any way special. It's just how it happened.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how it happened for that particular individual. This particular teacher resonated, and I learned whatever it was through this particular teacher. And I think that's important. I remember when we did the Perfume of Silence webinars, and there was one bit where Francis says that when a teacher dies, then he's put up on a pedestal, and the pedestal is put up 1 meter higher every year after his death, until it's so high that it's pretty much out of sight.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yes.
Funny. Somebody was asking about the it looks like Jude was asking about the title of Rupert and Donald's talk. It's on YouTube. Just look up Rupert and Donald Hoffman. It'll come right up. And Simon, do you remember Simon's last name? He's from the UK. He's
Simon Mundy.
Yeah, Simon Mundy.
Yeah.
He does a great interview.
I think the problem with that interview was that I don't feel that either Rupert or Simon actually understood what Don was saying most of the time.
Oh, really?
So, yes. There were things that Don was trying to get across his question, and it never got answered. And Simon very deftly moved the conversation on. But it was a beautiful question he answered. I've written to him privately. We've communicated privately since my podcast. To Don, yes, because I mean Don knows I understand what he's talking about. So,
okay,
so I gave him my answer to it. But, yeah.
What was the question?
Oh, the question was about why, when you try and define something really precisely using mathematics, that if you're on the right track, if you're going towards the one in some way, you get rewarded, even though your theory might not be 100% correct, and no theory will be 100% correct. The closer you get, the more you're rewarded, and why that was. And what I replied was that I used Francis's idea that the realm of mathematics is a separate realm that's independent of human minds. There's an ongoing philosophical question that no one's had an answer to, which is mathematics discovered or invented by human minds? And my view, and Francis's view, is that it is discovered. And if you say that it's discovered, then mathematical objects form a realm, and that realm, the essence of that realm is precision. So when you go up that realm, defining things precisely, then it's very natural. The further you go into that realm, the closer you get to the one. In the same way as the realm of mind, when you go inwards and you sink deeply beneath the mind, then what you get to is happiness. And if you go outwards into the sensory world, then what you experience is beauty. So you've got truth from mathematics, you've got beauty from the world, you've got happiness from going inwards, and those three are all one, all qualities of the absolute. So that was my view of the answer to his question.
Wow, that is so well answered. Amazing. And so would you say, Jenny, that math doesn't really run out? Like it actually merges
it's infinite. You see, what people are taught at school is not real mathematics. And, even a lot of the university course isn't real mathematics. real mathematics is beautiful discoveries of amazing structures. And Don, in that podcast, he showed you using Gödel's incompleteness theorem. It's one of my favorite theorems. He showed how there's no end to the mathematical structures which are present within the realm of mathematics. So
Right.
it was that was lovely. But I mean, it's fair enough. So neither Simon nor Rupert have any background in any of this at all, so they didn't pick up on it.
Right. And Rupert defers to Don and says, I'm not, I don't, he doesn't pretend to be where Don is. So it makes sense that someone like yourself would recognize right away that, oh, this shot over their heads. Yeah. Well, thank
Don
you for
talks
that
very
explanation.
fast, so it's Don talks so fast that it take you have to keep up with him. It takes an effort to keep up with him.
Yeah, I did like the reward, the idea that we get rewarded as we move through the science of mathematics and discovery.
Yes,
I thought that was really great.
It's beautiful. It's lovely, and the way he was rewarded in his theory is just astounding, because he was using his theory to model the interactions of fundamental particles in the Large Hadron Collider, the CERN, so that was what the model was originally about. But what the mathematics taught him, which is totally astounding, is that there is only one consciousness. So it came out of the mathematics rather than being a condition that he put, that my model has got to satisfy there's only one consciousness. That came out that everything is one. And the other thing that came out was the possibility of there being consciousness without objects. And those two things are really the 2 points which are absolutely fundamental to Advaita.
Right. I was thinking about this, and we'll get back to the study. Just one more point. When science realizes that consciousness is fundamental to reality, it's going to change everything in the way science looks and the way it theorizes, and also it's the technology will change.
Yes, that's right, and that's what he's doing. That's where he's starting from. That consciousness is primary. That consciousness is the primary substance of everything.
Right.
There most, as he says, almost no other scientists at the moment are doing that, but maybe they will eventually. And what he wants to do is to work with teachers on the spiritual side to see how science and spirituality can come together, because it's that intuition and insight from spirituality that can inform science. But he believes that science can also inform spirituality, but he finds a lot of resistance to spiritual people being prepared to change their pointers. He says, just like science changes, so the pointers for spirituality need to change. They need to, come up to date.
Yes.
Yeah,
I like that part of re-languaging, having that coming up with their own language that matches our spiritual language.
Yes.
Very, very interesting. Anyway, we're way off the book study. So, Bill, did you still have your hand up? There you are, William. You want to unmute your mic? How you doing?
Good. I was just going to say, even a child, we have these resources, recognizing patterns. And if a child can look at a bird that's died and see the seed pattern, snail shell, and even though he doesn't understand Fibonacci sequence, so on, he can see the pattern and that they match. And this is pure without any symbology, but we have that. It's built into us.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
the child will see that.
Yes, and maths is the study of pattern. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's all I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you, William. Good to see you. All right. Well, let's move on to. We looked at 62. Let's move on to 63.
So this actually follows on in a way, because he's saying, well, there's three paths of devotion, yoga, and jnana. And devotion we've just talked about. Yoga. Oh, we've got a bit of an echo coming here. I'm not sure what that's caused by.
There's no one else unmuted. I'm not sure where it's coming from.
Oh,
And I noticed that Bill, you're muted at the moment.
yeah. So
Okay, I'm muted. I thought I was trying to cut out the background sound, but it's not me.
Yeah, there's no one else.
Well, I think it's gone now, so that's all right.
Okay.
So yes, so the other path is yoga, and that's really a path of learning how to control the body mind. So hatha yoga, for example, is about the body, and there are various forms of yoga which are to do with the mind, controlling the activity of the mind. But what he's saying is that the devotion and yoga deal with only relative things. So the devotion deals with the object of devotion, or whatever that is, and the yoga deals with the body or the mind, which again are both relative things. And so they are, in a sense, inferior paths, or at best preparatory paths to the path of jnana. So he says their findings, therefore, can only be partial and incomplete. And he goes on, the jnana path looks from a broader perspective and comprehends within its scope both yoga and devotion. And that's really because devotion is, you need devotion to the truth, which is the only valid form of devotion on the path of jnana. But you need that.
So how would that look for someone here?
For someone here, he says the aspirant has to have a high degree of earnestness and sincerity to get to the truth, and that's real devotion. So I think it's exactly that. It's a desire. It's a desire to understand what I am, what the world is. Why am I here? All these very basic questions that most of us ask as children and then perhaps get lost. But at some point, there's a kind of determination that takes over. This is what I want to know, and it dominates our activities. I remember when I first came to the direct path, and I was following Rupert's teaching at that time, and I just read vast amounts, all of his books. I listened to all of his videos. I downloaded masses of his meditations, and I was spending pretty much all day, every day when I could, doing exactly that. I even wore out my computer. I had to Richard had to buy me a new computer.
And you probably wore out the pages on the book, and you probably had everything highlighted and pages marked.
So yes, it's and then once you've found what you're looking for, then all of that activity dies down, and you just enjoy it. But it's that earnestness that at the beginning of the path, I think, is really, really important.
Yeah, that's what he says. That and I love the way you answered, because I think that answer is everyone's answer. Everyone that comes here on a weekly basis has that earnest
Yes.
love for truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it talks about the yoga part is the part that I'm a little bit curious about. What exactly would you say the yoga piece experience is?
It will include some form of meditation, and often mantra meditation. And what that does, mantra meditation, if it's done properly, but usually after an awful lot of practice, will take you to Nirvikalpa Samadhi, which is it's consciousness without objects, but it's a kind of artificial state, because you're using a tool, which is the mantra meditation, to get there, and then you come back out of meditation and you're back in ordinary life again, and all of that's forgotten. So it's artificial in that way. There's something called siddhis, which he mentions, and you've probably heard of yogic flying and things that TM people did. It wasn't really flying, it was kind of bouncing along on mattresses, from what I could gather. But anyway, there are special powers that people can develop as a result of all of these practices, and particularly controlling the mind. Then you can develop these special powers, and special powers are called siddhis. That's what they call them.
Okay, but would they be controlling the mind, or would the mind just be responding to that samadhi experience?
No, they try to control the mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's control of the body as well, not just hatha yoga, but sort of eating very little, or not eating between certain hours, or fasting for long periods, all sorts of things.
Okay.
Like that.
So this practice would also be that method that some monks use to.
Sannyasins will use those. Yes, they're sometimes referred to as austerities.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this would be the practice that would be used when someone lays the body down. They stop the heart from breathing using this power of the mind.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. And yes, controlling the experience of pain as well.
So Paul has mentioned, aren't they distractions? though.
Yes, absolutely right. And I think that's what Atmananda is saying here. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
It says the Bojan controls, sharpens, and expands the mind to its maximum possibilities, attaining samadhi and powers. Okay, that's what you're talking about. Yeah. So it is through the
Yes,
jhana.
that's right. Yes.
Yeah, it's through the jhana alone that truth can be visualized, while yoga and devotion only prepare the ground for it.
Yes. In other words, we don't need to worry, and all of us here, because we're on the path of jnana. We're not on the path of yoga or devotion, so we don't need to worry about doing any of these difficult things.
Good. Okay. So he says, are you not annoyed when you are suddenly woken up from the deep sleep? That is because you love deep sleep more than you love activity. Deep sleep is complete rest. Yeah. I agree. And that's why if we shorten that, there might be a moment of, you want to be back there.
Yes.
Yeah. He says consciousness in the second paragraph on this page 36, consciousness never parts with you in any of the three states. In deep sleep, you are conscious of deep rest or peace. Inference is possible only of those things which have not been experienced. The fact that you had a deep sleep or profound rest is your direct experience, and you only remember it when you come to the waking state. It can never be an inference. Experience alone can be remembered. The fact that you were present throughout the deep sleep can also never be denied.
Yes. So it's not that consciousness disappears in deep sleep. It's just that at the time there's no objects present. So there's nothing that's actually experienced. There's no objective experience that's happening.
So would you say that the experience is recognized by how you feel when you come out of deep sleep?
I think partly that for me, I know there was deep sleep, but deep sleep is not just at night. The gaps between thoughts and perceptions are also the same thing as deep sleep, because the consciousness is the constant in the background. It's always there. So in deep sleep, there's just consciousness. There's no objects of consciousness. And similarly, in the gaps between perceptions and sensations, then it's equivalent to deep sleep. It's and somehow it feels the same. That the rest feels the same.
Right. Yeah. So often during the day, I would pause and I would just have this quiet presence experience. It's like, oh my God, this feels so good. That could be that.
Yes, it could be that, but it could be any time when an activity comes to an end. You finish writing an email, or you finish reading a sentence in a book, and you don't deliberately pause. A pause happens. It's just there.
Yeah.
And that it's a very natural process of going back into pure consciousness. Whenever the mind is not needed, then it goes back into pure consciousness.
Interesting. Yeah. So you want to move to the next discourse, 65?
65, right? Yes, he's just explaining the symbolism of an oil lamp being lit at sunset and sunrise, and it's really exactly what I was explaining, that reality shines by itself in between two thoughts. Consciousness shines in deep sleep and between two thoughts, two feelings, actions, and so on. And so he's just saying that that's part of the Hindu tradition, just to remind people of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Yeah, that would be the there are verses in different scriptures that speak of the oil and the lamp, and when we were in India last year, they a lot of things, there's symbolic of lighting. They lit Aranashala on this special day that is symbolic to that. Yeah.
Yes.
66, significance of family pollutions.
What he's really talking about here is the rituals that Hindus do when someone dies, because there's an idea that when someone dies, that in some way contaminates the household, because it's saying, well, there is birth and there is death. Now, in reality, what we are isn't born and doesn't die. So, but these rituals are supposed to purify that situation and bring people back to the understanding that no one is born and no one dies, not what they really are. It's only a body that is born, body that dies.
Okay, so they somehow purify that.
They do all
an
sorts of
atonement?
rituals. I can't remember most of them. I have some
Okay.
Indian friends who've talked a bit about things, but I don't remember enough to tell you accurately what they do.
Okay, but here, if you go into and there are these rituals that are, that looks like they're, I mean, that's where the scapegoat term came from in the kind of the Old Testament, where they would do a sacrifice ritual, and
Yes.
that's really just religious unnecessary activity.
Yes.
Yeah. But I do
Yes.
like in the second paragraph of this discourse where he talks about the shroud of innocence. Babies and children are very much akin to the absolute, and this is sort of what William was referring to. When we're children, before we have the belief systems layered on the identity of what we think we are, we're more in that early waking state. We're in that earlier primal state of our true self.
Yes, and he's explaining here how parents, when they're educating children, then they teach them the name of everything, so they start dividing their world up, divide seeing into objects, and so on. and they're given a lot of worldly knowledge. And of course, all of that's necessary.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it brings a shroud of ignorance with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we spend, depending on what age you come into your search, your earnest desire to remember or to know the self, and the degree of you have to let go of those things. You have to let go of the things of attachment. You may not stop doing all of those things, but you no longer
Yes.
are the identity that's attached to the doing of them.
Yes, you no longer believe yourself to be a body mind. You no longer believe that that's your reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So moving on to 67,
Yeah.
karma, sannyasa, and
Karma,
karma.
sannyasa, and karma yoga. So karma sannyasa, that refers to passivity. So sannyasa, the same root as sannyasin, the monk who renounces everything and doesn't do anything. He doesn't have a role in the world. He just renounces and renounces and renounces, and so that's the perfection of the passive principle. And karma yoga, the path of the householder, so that's doing things. Yoga being action, doing things, and that's the but doing things in a particular way according to the principles of yoga. And that's the perfection of the active principle in man. But he says that realization is beyond passivity and activity. So neither of those are really what we're looking for. That realization allows both activity and passivity. There's time for passivity and there's time for activity, and
Right.
both are possible.
Right. Well, would you say Ramana Maharshi was a renunciate?
For the most part, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say he was. And
Yes.
it's refreshing to have the teaching of Atmananda say that that's not it.
Yes. Yes.
It's very refreshing and also he encourages to the experience of being a householder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the difficulties of following Ramana Maharshi's teaching is that for him, it all happened by accident. Realization happened. I mean, apparently, maybe there's no accidents, but it didn't happen through a particular path. It just happened.
Yeah.
And for us, then, maybe it would happen in our lives if we weren't pursuing any kind of interest in spirituality, or maybe it wouldn't, but we wouldn't want to rely on that. So Atmananda was someone who studied, who loved truth, and who studied and found a path through the teachers he met, and in a way that's very much easier for us to follow that method in the same way that Jean Klein went and looked for a path, and then Francis went and found Jean Klein, and Rupert found Francis. So they didn't rely on suddenly being struck by enlightenment.
Yeah. And it's interesting that Rupert spent many years, of several decades, on the path, as I think you did too, didn't you? Didn't you spend
Yes, yeah,
several
yes,
decades before finding the direct path yourself?
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So we took the shortcut, and you are helping us. Thank you. Nice. Okay, so 68, the three states of man, each independent of one another. This is interesting.
Yes, this is quite weird in a way. It says deep sleep is usually said to be the cause of the dream and the waking states. And I think that's really an analogy with birth and death, and rebirth.
Yeah.
And he's saying that that if you think that way, then that that depends on the law of causality, which is misapplied here. So I don't think we think that way anyway. So in a way, he's kind of answering a question that we don't have.
Yes. Yeah, he is. And he
Yeah.
gives the answer in the next discourse in the very last sentence, that
Yes,
deep
yes,
sleep
that's
state can never be a cause of the other two
to
states.
say it's yes, yes, exactly. But we never would have thought it was. But I think if you're a Hindu, then you wouldn't see it that way. And so I think this is these two discourses, both of them, were in response to Hindus who did think that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Amy says that 68 brings to mind ACIM's advice not to confuse the levels. Each level has its own law, in a sense. And until the laws sort of divest or merge into pure presence, into pure consciousness, then the laws don't apply. Yeah. And 69, why is not deep sleep a cause of the other two? Oh, well, we kind of answered that, right?
It's the same thing, really. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we finished with 69. We finished the discourses.
I think weren't we supposed to do 70 as well?
Oh, are we? Okay, good.
I think that was what was on
Oh, yeah,
the
you're right.
schedule.
It is up to 61 to 70.
Yeah, yeah.
How does memory function?
Yes, and this is interesting because memory can be a little bit of a trap for anyone on the spiritual path, because we talk about ultimately there being no time and that everything is now and living in the now. But the question then is, well, what is memory? And so what he's saying is that memory is an undeniable experience to the ordinary man, because mind works on a basis of time. So if you have time as your backdrop, then experiences kind of fit in to a line of time. But what he says is that actually that shows you, that understanding shows you that there is a permanent principle which is equally connected with the past, the present, and the future. Just the fact that memory exists, and equally the fact that we can project ideas into the future. So in a sense, it proves the existence of a permanent principle behind our mental activities. And it's a bit of a complicated argument, but I can see what he means. So he goes on to say, well, it's clearly a function of mind. It's not a function of consciousness as such, because consciousness is timeless, but it's a function of mind. And
it's still within consciousness once you understand the
consciousness, yes, mind is the activity of consciousness.
Yeah.
But memory is in consciousness. There's no time, so you have to superimpose time before you can have memory.
But memory is more of a recognition or a record of when I use the word event, am I imposing time?
Yes, you see, the mind can't really work without time, and that's the difficulty, really, of talking about it. The way I sometimes imagine it is, if instead of time you're thinking about space, then I'm in Gloucestershire, and I know that New York is out there somewhere, but I can't experience it at the moment. So I can have a memory of New York because I went there once, but I can't experience it at the moment because it's separated in space. So things, so space equally is a superimposition. But if you think of everything existing anyway, all the time within that space, New York doesn't stop existing, and Gloucestershire doesn't stop existing. They're all there. It's just a question of whether the mind is able to perceive them at a particular moment. And the same applies to memory. All experience is there, but some of it we can't get at, and some of it we can. And the bits we can get at, they're either the bits that are the sensory input now, or else they're thoughts, which are memories from previous sensory input.
Mm. And we can discriminate or discern when we're using a past memory or an image versus just being present in this now moment. So we can notice when we're resting as now or perceiving as a time and space experience.
Yes, exactly, because if we're in the now, then things come in through the senses or through bodily sensations. Whereas if there are thoughts, then they're going to be related to past or future.
Yeah. There's a Susan has mentioned at 12:55. Thanks, Paul. It's a bit confusing to me because I am not sure if he is using the terms in the same way, such as deep sleep can be any moment, as Jenny described earlier, when there is just consciousness. So
yes, that's right. I mean, he's talking specifically about sleep at night, I think, earlier, but elsewhere in the discourses, then you find references to pure consciousness consciousness standing alone, which is the same as deep sleep.
Right. And it says,
Hey, Bill,
Go-
I'm sorry to interrupt.
go ahead, Susan.
Because I had my hand up, just to
oh,
clarify.
I didn't see that. Thank you.
No worries, no worries. So yeah, I like that very much. And thank you, Jenny, because I would see, I would not have interpreted deep sleep as the way that you just said, which is very beautiful. So then the dream state, is that again, as you know, certainly I might think of it like when I'm actually sleeping at night and I have dreams, or is he, maybe I'm trying to read too much into his definitions or his interpretations.
Well, the dream state can be daydreaming as
Okay.
well.
Okay.
So it's mental constructions, isn't
Okay.
it?
Okay.
Yeah. Rather than as opposed to sensory input.
Okay. I see.
Yeah.
And waking
Yeah.
would be experiential input.
Waking normally, but sometimes we go into daydreams, don't we, and sort of fantasies and things, even when we're awake.
Mhm.
And eventually, what I found, and I think what most people find at some point on the path, is that these distinctions between deep sleep and dreaming at night and daydreaming and being fully awake and where the distinctions disappear, they blur, and you don't think of the period during the night when you're in bed as being that different from the period when you're awake and doing things, because all of those same things happen.
It's all the same. Yeah, exactly.
It's just it's longer and it's deeper. But of course, if you meditate, as Bill said, if you sit down, you want to pause, you just want to rest for a while, you go into consciousness without objects, nirvikalpa samadhi, then that's again the same.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Bill?
Yes, Amy, hi.
Hi there. I have a question for you and Jenny, and it's based on a question that I asked Rupert at the retreat at Garrison this past week. And Jenny, I brought you into the conversation by way of saying that oh gosh, I can't even remember what it was, a while ago. Your comment that thoughts arise just from the universe. I'm paraphrasing you there.
Yes.
But I loved that comment, and I began to play with it and watch it, and that it's just and I called it an object. And Rupert said, no. He said, I am not teaching that anymore, and proceeded to explain that using the metaphor of a thought as an object, if that's the right term, is sort of rudimentary, and that he wants to teach from the launching pad now, and that thoughts are just knowing. And I didn't completely understand that, and I thought I recognize that I know the object, but his insistence that thoughts aren't objects, and I wondered if you could add anything to that to help me get it.
I don't know where he's coming from. What I do know is that Francis feels that Rupert has gone away from the original teaching, and that may be one. I don't even know what Francis means when he says that. It's just something that Ellen and I have discussed. But so I think he's developed a new set of languages, really, which is different from that of Jean Klein and Francis.
Okay.
I mean, Francis was his teacher. He used to use knowing to mean just awareness. So I think one possibility is that he's going very strongly towards idealism, which is basically saying that consciousness and mind are the same thing. That obviously our minds are limited, but there's a universal mind which is not limited. So that's his view. Francis and Jean Klein don't basically say that we can't know that.
Mm.
That and Francis is much more inclined towards the view that if you describe consciousness as being the same as mind, then it as a teaching tool, then the problem with that is that it gives a human quality to consciousness, and he feels that consciousness is way beyond any form of humanity or human mind. It's way, way, way beyond all of that. So I know that's the reason why he doesn't do that.
Okay.
And that would be my guess as to what he's talking about. I mean, my advice would be don't go there, because I think his original teaching, which came from Francis, was much clearer. And what I've seen from him recently has been less clear.
I really appreciate your saying that. Because it wasn't clear to me, and I noticed in the comments section that several people are using the term object when it comes to, KM says even a thought is in memory, not in the moment. It has to turn into an object, and then Paul says they are objects, not turning to objects. And so I just want
yes, that's right. Well, what they're saying is on the chat is absolutely right. And the reason, but it may also be the use of the word object, because object in this teaching means anything that's phenomenal, anything that you can be aware of. And you can be aware of a thought. Therefore, by that definition, a thought is an object. And you can be aware of a memory, and therefore, by that definition, a memory is an object.
That's perfect. I really appreciate your clarification. That takes a load off my mind. Okay. So thank you very much. I was feeling like, I don't get this.
That's the problem.
Thank you.
The problem with a teacher of Rupert's level and respect, admiration, and also, he's like the modern day guru, so to speak, and to have it be in conflict with his past teaching or his teacher's teachings, or to be indifference to it, is it can be confusing. And for me, it blurs the lines a little bit, because we're talking about I think a sage like Ramana, he would probably see there wouldn't be any blurred lines. There wouldn't be any distinctions necessary, because it would just be one thing. But for trying to disseminate or being able to verbalize these subtle nuances, so that one can be and know the established position, you have to have these tools, and the tools of the mind being the activity of consciousness is very helpful. And especially when you can distinguish between phenomenal and infinite differences. Phenomenals differences, thoughts to me, if you make thoughts the same as consciousness, then the distinction that I use to as a tool to know is removed. I don't have the tool any longer.
Yeah. I think what's important is for each person to find a teacher with whom they really resonate. And for me, I found I went to Francis because I found his teaching was much deeper, but it's partly because the language is very much my language, because it's the language of science and mathematics, and it made sense to me, and I felt it was deeper. But I think this is an individual matter, and it's up to each person to find the teacher where you really say, yes, that's how it is. I see that. I know that within myself.
Yeah, I agree, and I agree with. Rupert is he's my favorite. I love Francis's teachings. I love this guy too. This guy's awesome. And Ramana, but you know what? It's like somebody says everyone has room to evolve. And you can find holes in everybody's cheese. It's good. And I'm glad you had your experience at the Garrison retreat, Amy. Did you enjoy that experience?
Oh, it was fantastic. And I give a shout out to Susan, who was there with me. And we just had a great time. I could go on and on about it. But I did get the sense that, and I say this in part out of ignorance because I'd never been to one of Rupert's retreats before, but there was sort of an intuition that I came away with that he's shifting somehow, and I can't really explain it or put my finger on it.
It's a big shift, I think, and his where he is now doesn't resonate with me at all. Where he was before, it did tremendously, and I learned so much from him, but not anymore. No.
I really, really appreciate that, Jenny, and I do. I really do. It just seemed to me that something was happening, but we talked a lot about art and how artistic expression is an expression of consciousness, and where the artist goes to really bring up her or his true inspiration. We talked about a whole bunch of different things, and I would encourage anyone who wants to go on a retreat to overcome their fear and do it, because I was kind of like, oh, but by the end of it, we had so much fun together. And I will say that I described it as a choir and a choir master, and Rupert was the choir master, but it takes the whole choir to make the choir master succeed. And so all of us together were singing our own individual songs, and by the end of the week, the harmony was just really something. It was beautiful. Everyone was beautiful.
Nice.
It was great. Thank you for asking.
Thank you. Well, this has been a great discussion, and this is not a teacher bashing party. We love Rupert, we love Francis, and we really appreciate their teaching. And I would say that if Rupert is expanding, that we need to give space for him to evolve and allow that to take place. That's my recommendation. And thank you, everyone, for being here. And we'll look at our next discourses next week, 71 to 80. And William Price is our co-host. And thank you. This has been great. Thank you, Jenny, for your input and your wisdom. We appreciate it a lot.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, everyone.
All right. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.